All right, Shabbosai, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. We're continuing Mesillas Hashem today in Parak Chaf Dalit, chapter 24. And we are picking up Mesillas Hashem in the middle of Bira Yiras Hachit. Ramchal says as follows: Yeshayahu Amar b'Nevuaso, Yeshayahu said as part of his prophecy, Ve'el ze abit el oni uneche ruach v'charid al dvari. V'David HaMelech ishtabech bazeh v'amar, Sarim ridafuni chinam, umidvarcha pachad libi. So the point that Ramchal is making over here is he's quoting these psukim which have this element of pachad, this element of fear. And of course, remember again, just to be clear, the element of fear that we're referring to over here is not yiras ha'onesh, right? It's not fear of punishment, and it's not the yiras haromimos, it's not the reverence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but rather, again, we're talking over here really primarily focused on yiras hachit, which Ramchal defined as this fear, or really this ongoing vigilance, in ensuring that the way that I act, the way that I behave, is absolutely appropriate and free from sin. A constant review and constant analyzation of one's actions to make sure that they are free from any type of sin. He goes on, he says, Ukvar matzanu, this is actually very beautiful, Shamalochim hagidolim v'haromim, charidim v'roashim tamid mipnei geyos Hashem. Ramchal writes, we find that the Malachim, even like the chief malach, remember again in Shamayim, in the celestial sphere, there are different levels of malachim. So even the malachim hagidolim, even the greatest of malachim, when they are in the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, charedim v'roashim tamid mipnei geyos Hashem. They're trembling and they're fearful, free from the greatness, from the geos, from the greatness of the Ribono Shel Olam. Until again, Chazal said is a mashal. Bimshal chachmasam. Nahar dinar mehechan yotze. Where does the dinar river? Where does it stem from? Meziasan shel chayos, from the sweat of the chayos. The chayos are a type of malachim. So in other words, that the malachim ultimately have such a fear and such a trepidation. Now I will say, what do malachim have fear from? In other words, what's the source of their fear? It's from Chalak says v'hu mipnei ema asher aleihem tamid meiramemusa yisbarach. This is from the ima, this is from the fear that comes ultimately again from their recognition of the greatness of the Ribono Shel Olam. Pen ya'adru davar katan min hakavod v'hakidush haray lefanav. What are they concerned about? They're concerned lest their behavior not reflect the full greatness and glory of the Ribono Shel Olam. So we'll say this is a little bit here of a combination of Yiras HaRomimos and Yiras HaChet, kind of both of them together. A certain element of Yiras HaRomimos, in that, again, they recognize the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they recognize how that greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu requires of them to behave in a certain way. And there's also this Yiras HaChet, out of a concern that at the end of the day, they're not going to behave in the way which befits the Malachim. Or I should say, they're not going to behave in a way which reflects the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He goes on, he says, U'b'chol shah, shenigleis hashchina al iza makom shiyeh, yerad v'ra'ash v'rogez, v'hu masha amar ha'kosov, eretz ra'asha, af shamayim notfu mipnei elokim, v'omer, lu karasa shamayim yeradata, bipanecha harim nolasu. Kol shekein, so we'll say, so again, more psukim backing up this idea. Kol shekein, b'nei adam, so we'll say, so now, we've just seen over here something really amazing. If the malachim themselves kind of have this sense of fear and trepidation from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what's the fear? Where does that fear and trepidation stem from? Well, the Ramchal says it stems from this duality. On one hand, this recognition of the greatness of Hashem, and number two, a concern of not wanting to do something wrong or do something inappropriate in the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it's this dual Yiras HaRomimos, Yiras HaChet, which exists by the Malachim. Now, if it exists by the angels, the Ramchal writes, Kol shekin b'nei Adam, sheroi sheyirgazu v'yirashu b'yadam shlifnei Hashem heim omdin tamid. So we'll say, if the Malachim have this sense of Yirah, then all the more so, we, man, have to possess it as well. To have this idea, to have this recognition that we stand before the Ribono Shel Olam. And because we stand before the Ribono Shel Olam, v'naki lahem lasos ezer davar, she'enu lefi romimus kavodi yisbarach shemo. And I will say it is so easy to unfortunately perform an act that is not in line with the honor that befits, which befits HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I will say, so again, all that he's describing over here is this need. This is where Yiras HaChet comes in. Yiras HaChet comes in where a person is constantly vigilant and constantly thinking about, how am I acting? What am I doing? How am I behaving? And is that behavior in line with the fact that I live in the presence of Hashem? That's the fundamental question. He goes on, Humash Amar Elifaz le'Iyov. This is what Elifaz said to Iyov. Ma enosh ki yiska v'chi yitzdak yolod isha hein bikdoshav lo yamin v'shamayim lo zaku be'ina. Va'omer hein ba'avadav lo yamin u'ba'ma'alachav yasim tahala ach shochnei batei chomer asher ba'afar yisadam yedakum lifnei ash. So we'll stop over here for today. Right, it is the end. Over here, I think this is so we'll stop over here for today. But I will say, so again, the point that Ramchal is making, just to kind of bring it together again. So remember, the Ramchal highlighting to us that there are three different levels of Yira. Again, it's good to chazer this. Three different levels of Yira. Yiras ha'onesh, fear of punishment. Right? Simplest, most elementary level of Yira. Again, the challenge with that is, it's often where we start, and sometimes chas v'shalom where we stop. Right? Then the goal to graduate to Yiras HaRomimos, a recognition of the awesomeness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But here what Ramchal is really spending the bulk of its time on is Yiras HaChet. And again, I will say Yiras HaChet does not mean simple fear of sin. Rather, Yiras HaChet means that a constant analyzation of one's actions to make sure that they are free from blemish, to make sure that the actions ultimately are as they should be, and ultimately free from any type of negativity. Remember, again, I will say, just important to restate, Ramchal said, wherein lies the fundamental difference between Yiras HaOnesh and, Yiras HaRomimos and Yiras HaChet. Remember, again, according to the Ramchal, Yiras HaRomimos comes up, we'll call it in an actional way. When I'm performing a mitzvah, when I'm davening, I'm doing a chesed, in that moment, I recognize that I'm in the presence of Hashem. Or, when I'm about to commit an Aveira, Yiras HaRomimos prevents me from committing that Aveira. As opposed to Yiras HaChet, when does Yiras HaChet occur? When does it occur? According to Ramchal, always. Always. Because remember, I will say, I'm always engaged in some type of action, right? I'm always engaged in some type of activity. So because of that constant analysis of what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, that's constant and ongoing. And as such, Yiras HaChet itself becomes a constant, or I should say, a perpetual fixture of our daily lives. We'll also stop over here. Shkoyach.